All right, folks. Well, um, tonight is a super interesting topic because we are going to look at the ways that liquor stores have little triggers in store to prompt us to buy wine, and restaurants do the same thing. We're going to look at wine consumer behavior, wine marketing campaigns, what's worked in the past, what hasn't, because our expert here tonight on the Sunday Sipper Club really knows, has dug into that, has done the research, and has some fascinating results to share with us. Now, before I get into that, I want to welcome all of you here tonight to the Sunday Sipper Club, where we gather every Sunday from 6 p.m. at 6 p.m. Eastern to talk to the most interesting people in the world of wine. Now, before I introduce my guest, let me know in the comments, where are you logging in from? And I've always been curious, are you on desktop or mobile? I'm thinking most of you might be on mobile, but I don't know. So just what is the city, state, province, and are you on desktop or mobile? Now, before we jump in, I just want to let you know that you can always take your wine knowledge to the next level by joining me on a free online wine class at nataliemclean.com/pro. And it's a video class, and we have a lot of fun with that. So you can pick a class time that works for you. And I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. You know you're going to enjoy this conversation. So take a moment now before we really get into it to share this video with your friends, family, colleagues, and let them know even better why they might be interested in joining us as well. Because as you know, at the end of every conversation we have here, I draw for a winner. So I'll be drawing for a winner from last week's conversation, a signed copy of my book, Red, White, and Drunk All Over. Our guest has provided some interesting swag, if you will, for tonight's conversation. We'll let you know what that is in a moment. All right, so let me introduce our guest more fully. He is the James Young Regents Professor of Hospitality Management and the Director of Texas Wine Marketing Research Institute at Texas Tech University. He worked with the New Zealand grape and wine industry before becoming involved in the Texas industry in the late 1980s and has served as president and other roles within that association. He completed his doctoral dissertation on winery tourism and continues to conduct research on marketing and economic issues related to wine. He has also published numerous articles and on these topics in a variety of professional journals and has presented at various international conferences. And I would like to welcome him now to the Sunday Sipper Club. Welcome, Dr. Tim Dodd. Hello.
Hi, Natalie. Thank
All
you,
right.
and thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. Our pleasure. And you're in Lubbock, Texas, correct?
Yes, and for those of you who don't know where Lubbock, Texas is, it's in the high plains of Texas in the Panhandle, kind of the lower Panhandle area, and has been the center part of a lot of the grape growing industry down here for really the last 30 years or so.
Oh, fantastic. Is that because it's at high altitude or high altitude plantings surround you?
Yes, exactly. We're here at about 3,000 feet. So we're on a plain. It's very flat, but we get the hot days,
Yeah.
long hot summer days, but then cool evenings. It cools down to the 60s and 70s, 70s in the evening, and even cooler actually in some parts during the summer. So that allows us to be able to grow good quality grapes up here.
Oh, fabulous. I do want to know more about Texas wine, even though we can't really get it here in
Right.
Ontario. But we have viewers from across the states, Canada, the world, actually. And
Yes.
speaking of them, I am going to check over on the comments because we've got lots of folks coming in the virtual door already. Wow. Okay, let me just scroll down here because I want to acknowledge the
Uh-huh.
folks who have joined us. Jason Davies is here from the UK. Laurie Kilmartin is here from Ottawa.
Great.
Excellent. And oh, you're on mobile, Jason. Anne McLean is in Halifax. Bill Schwartz is in Regina, Saskatchewan. Aaron Weaver is in DC and on mobile desktop, laptop. Oh, I gotcha. You're a hybrid, Aaron. Alan Cameron is here, but drinking kombucha. That's okay, Alan. Um, Patty and Paul are here from Virginia on mobile. Andrea Shapiro is here. Interesting topic tonight. Always curious to see the tricks of the marketing trades out there for all wine lovers. All right. Nick Johnson is here from Cape Girardeau in Minnesota. Lori Sweet is here from Kingston. Catherine Fleming from Brossard, Quebec. Wow. Joanna Quartel, Toronto. Donna Whitaker from Ohio. Nick Johnson says, hello, Dr. Dodd.
Yes, I
Do you
Nick.
know him?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. You got your insiders here. Paul says, good evening to you both. Carolyn Wolfe has joined us. Henry Liguri, Los Fox 5, Las Vegas. That sounds like a television station, the way you're putting it there, Henry, maybe? And Paul and Patty have a glass of Sauvignon Blanc in hand. Natalia is here from Lubbock, Texas. Bet you know Natalia.
I do.
Hello. And Carolyn Wolfe is from Nova Scotia. All right, guys, I will be back to you as comments come in, but let's jump right into our discussion. Now, you have an interesting story, Tim, about how you first came to wine. So why don't you share that with us to start off with?
Sure. I think everyone has iconic wine moments in their lives that they really remember. Some of them may have been something that really got you interested in wine. Mine was actually, as a 22-year-old, I was working 3 jobs, all of them involving alcohol in some form, bar work after I'd graduated from university. And we were mostly selling beer at the liquor store that I was at. But one night, my boss pulled out an old bottle of Shiraz, Australian Shiraz that they had, and opened that. And I was just blown away. It was really just so more interesting than any of the wines I'd ever had. Really, I just had sweet whites and sparkling cold duck and things like that. As a young person growing up, and so. When I tried that really stuck in my mind, and I thought, wow, this is an industry, this is an area that is a little different. It has a lot more complexity than I ever knew, and so I started learning from there on out, and had various roles that kept building on that.
Yeah, that's true. It always seems to be one pivotal wine or experience that turns us on to wine. And I would love to know from people who are watching what your pivotal wine was. But that's a great story, Tim. I would love to know, because I've you've published lots of research papers along with Natalia and probably perhaps others who are viewing now. So much research, so much interesting insights. What would surprise us about the way we buy wine? What sort of behaviors do we exhibit in liquor stores, especially, that we may not even be aware of?
Yes, I think it's, or the main thing with wine is that it's just so different, or depending on situations, on the consumer. And for those of you who have been both a consumer and also involved in the profession of it, the very good people are those that really try and figure out the match. And when you can match up the level of expertise of that consumer with the types of wine that you think they like, then you really can hone in directly there. And I think that's what really good wine stores do. They do that through training of their staff, and certainly in restaurants, that's a major part of good salesmanship as well.
And so, let me see if I can misinterpret your insights on purpose. Does that mean those with expertise, high expertise, should be drinking complex wines and the rest baby duck? I'm just saying that to be provocative.
Right. No, I mean, I think that the retail outlet or the store, whoever is selling the wine, needs to figure out or make sure they know who their consumer is, very quickly, and sell to that person's needs and wants.
And how do they figure out quickly? Are there a few key questions? Are they looking at how they're dressed? Or what are the questions they might ask to discover, like, where this person is at, what they might like?
Yeah, definitely. Some of it is in pricing. Some of it is region, and you can just get a sense of someone's knowledge and background as you start going through a little conversation. And I think people engage in that conversation, they can get a lot quicker to where they need to be.
And so, what would you, if you were on the floor, what would be your
Mm.
first two questions that you'd ask a prospective wine buyer?
Um, Price range that they're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
and also what's the occasion.
Okay.
Occasion for wine is a huge part of a consumer's um, interest for that. If it's just a casual time, then you're going to be looking at a completely different wine than something that you might be serving to your boss, for instance, in the, at a very important dinner that you might be having.
Sure.
So that should signal sort of one or two paths that you might go on.
Yeah. And how would you gauge their level of interest? Would you sort of say, can you pronounce Gewürztraminer? Or well, how would you do?
Give them a little test of regions and things like that.
What might you ask to gauge interest? Like, because there are people who work in
Mm.
wine stores watching this. So, what would be a
Sure,
sort of subtle question you could ask, or the sommelier in a restaurant, for instance, to gauge
sure.
someone's level of expertise?
I think you start with things like, um, do you prefer a red wine? For a red wine or a white wine is sort of a good first coverage of the thing, and then you start talking about regions. You start talking about pairing of is this sort of a meal wine? Is it something for casual drinking? So you sort of start narrowing down from this very broad picture that we have with wine of
Yeah.
literally thousands of different types, variety bottles that can be in the store, down to that last one,
Right.
and
Until their
and
eyes
just sort of a
glaze
series.
over.
Right, exactly, and and sometimes it can really be down to how much they want to spend,
Yeah,
and
sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so, one of your papers, research studies, looked at the triggers that wine retailers use to encourage us to buy wine. So, what's out there in liquor stores? Is it end aisle displays? Is it certain colors? What is it that liquor retailers use to
Mm-hmm.
sort of almost unconsciously trigger, oh, yeah, I'd like that
Yeah,
wine?
by that. Yeah, a lot of some of it's actually related to the wine laws of the particular state and region. For instance, some laws will allow in-store tastings.
Okay.
Some regions will not. That's obviously one that is in-store tastings is a very powerful tool that retailers will use, because it allows you to try before you buy, and get to feel comfortable with that wine and what it is before you actually pick it up. So that's a sort of an impulse kind of buying. Um, there's also certainly quantity buying, which again sometimes can be, you get 10% off if you buy six or more, or whatever that might be. So instead of buying four bottles, you end up throwing another couple in there. Just to fill that up. I know I do that regularly. I get to sort of 10 bottles and then realize that I get a 15% or 10% discount on the dozen. So those sorts of things, placing certain promotions in aisles, certainly seasonal promotions that are around Christmas, Thanksgiving, all those sort of things are important as well.
Right. And have you discovered in your research certain in store promotions that are just not effective? Like, just they've been tried and it just didn't
Mm.
work?
No, not I can't think of any.
Okay.
There's a lot of debate about regional promotion,
Ah,
for instance, making Texas its own section, or
yeah.
should it be scattered around in with the varietals? And there's still some debate about that. And what one finding we did find is if there's a negative perception towards a particular region, maybe it's new, people don't really know about it or anything, then you're better to put it in with just scatter it amongst the varietals rather than highlighting it as its own section. So,
Sure. Yeah, the maturity of the industry. There's
right.
parallels there for Niagara, Okanagan here in Canada, but I'm sure other
Yes.
wine regions in the US and around the world.
Mm.
So, with Texas, are a lot of retailers now highlighting them because people want to buy local?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
very much so, and also because of I think the quality and maturity of the industry. 30 years ago, probably not so much. We had about 25 wineries. Now we have about 400,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
400 wineries located around the state. And
Okay.
so it's moved from being just a very kind of small, almost quaint kind of thing where you had cowboy boots on the label and sort of and it being very much like that to a lot more of a very serious industry where they figured out varietals that grow best in regions and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, cowboy boots in Texas and marsupials in Australia.
Australia, that's right. Yeah.
I'm going to dip back into the comments because I can see them streaming by us. So let me just go down the line here. And Lori Sweet is drinking, whoa, a 98 Chateau Margaux.
Oh,
Wow, Lori, let
nice.
us come over. Can we decant that for you, Lori?
Yes, that's right.
Lori Kilmer, another Lori, separate Lori, a different Lori, is drinking a Jean-Marie Arnaud Vaccarat 2007, having roast beef smoking on my big green egg, barbecue to barbecue shortly for dinner. Lovely. We want to come there too.
Yeah.
Natalia, love the term iconic wine moment, perhaps the topic of a next research project.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yes.
That
Actually,
one.
we should get your viewers to all send in their own little stories
Absolutely.
of like how I came to love wine, or
Yes,
something,
that
a
pivotal
topic like
moment.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
That
yeah,
switch, because aren't
yeah.
we looking at that? Like, my background is in marketing. I used to work at
Ah,
P&G in the food
oh,
brands, and I have an MBA. So blah blah blah. But I'm fascinated by wine marketing and case
yeah.
studies, and that's the method I studied. So that's why I was so interested in tonight's topic. But yeah, there's usually a turning point when someone turns on to the category, I think.
Yes.
Mark Gibson says, great topic. My wife works at Malivoire in retail. That's a winery. And sadly is working now, but I will make sure she sees the archived video. Now back to my Toss 2011 Pinot Noir. Excellent, Mark Gibson. Nick Johnson says, hashtag go Texan. Um, Nick
Yes.
Johnson says also hashtag state level cultural branding. All right.
Right. Yeah.
Lori says, I like the total wine concept in the US where they have wines by varietal. When I go shopping, I go shopping for a particular varietal, which is
Yeah.
interesting too. I've been to, I don't know, Tim, if you have been to or are aware of stores that will also organize wines by food pairing. There's some in New York that do, like they have fish and then they have chicken.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I'm wondering what your opinion is of that.
Yeah, I think any of those ways, and actually, there's some big stores that will have it by both variety and then also by region.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly food pairing's a good one as well. I've also seen some by the sort of heavy light, it's sort of red, white, and then heavy to lighter type style wines too. So
Right. Like a
yeah,
progressive wine list
right,
almost.
yeah, yeah.
So, are there unusual triggers that restaurants use or hidden triggers that restaurants use to get us to buy wine, like through your studies or even just what you've read?
Yes, we did a little study once where we put wine right next to a food item.
Ah,
So we would have, if the chicken item, we would, put Chardonnay and a Viognier or something beside that.
like a
And
display in the restaurant?
no, we
Oh,
we would just have it on the menu.
oh, I see.
So
Okay.
sorry,
Yeah.
so it would be on the menu,
Yeah.
and we looked at whether or not that increased sales of wine during that time, and we found that it did.
Yeah.
And it's basically was highlighting that and giving consumers also a kind of a trigger and an idea of a way um, to realize that this is a good match and make them feel a little more comfortable. And
Yeah.
especially, and I would say this works especially in a state such as Texas was, and still is to some extent, a pretty new wine consuming state as well as a wine producing state. We were in I think, the 40th or 42nd in terms of per capita wine consumption for a
Okay.
long time, and very low per capita wine. It was basically beer and whiskey
Right.
or no alcohol,
Yep.
so there's been a lot of consumer change too in terms of making this more of a wine culture here
Absolutely.
over the last 30 years, which has been fantastic. Yeah.
There's so many parallels with Canada. I
Mm.
mean, because we are on a northern parallel and
Hmm.
perhaps you're in the more southern, it
Yes.
wasn't traditionally a wine culture, a wine growing region, and it was beer and whiskey up here too.
Right. Yeah.
Um, have you looked at restaurant lists where they sort of have the anchoring cheap wine and then you go one,
Hmm.
two up and that's the one you buy? Like,
Right.
have you looked at anything like that?
No, we haven't, but I am aware of that's how a lot of restaurants do make theirs, and you see such wonderful wine lists and also such some really terrible ones as well, and
Right.
it's and I really think it can make the success or failure of the whole restaurant. A wine list is such an important part these days, and as that
Absolutely.
as that wine culture is developing, and people are expecting more now too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all becoming more sophisticated.
And I will say, and just to add to that, I want to say too that I think local wine industries play a huge role in developing that wine consumer culture. I think if you
Hmm.
have a local wine industry like in Ontario, and I've
Yep.
been up there and a time up there with Brock University,
Yes.
and that they do some good wine research work. That if you have that local wine industry, it gets people out to the wineries. They get to see and hear about wine. They get to experiment and try different wines at those wineries and start feeling comfortable about it. They bring it home. They start their own little cellar. They do all those things
Yeah.
that create that wine culture. So I think that does play a very important role.
Yes, because I think wine is a hand sell, if you will, like in a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant or a liquor store. I mean, it's just so confusing. You can read the first chapter of a book, you can try on a dress, but usually, unless there's a tasting station, you can't try that wine.
Yeah.
You've just got the label to go on. So I think being coddled in a good way as a consumer through a local
Yes.
industry is a good thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to go back to the comments because they're flying off here. That was
Uh,
my iconic. Oh, Lori was saying her Bordeaux was her iconic wine experience, not that she's drinking it
hmm.
tonight. I thought that was your Sunday wine, Lori. Um, Claire Papineau is enjoying a Cru Meritage from Ontario. Is absolutely wonderful with a nice homemade beef stew. And we are lucking out. We are looking in Ontario to have LCBO release magazine biweekly. Beverly is in SoCal, Southern California. Excellent. Lori says there are so many wines out there that we don't carry. We are rather limited. Yeah, I wish we could try some Texan wine here. Claire says, totally agree. However, the price point of our easily accessible wines are very good compared to other provinces. Lori asks, Dr. Tim, do you think that the bigger wineries that have more marketing spend greatly influence what is available and what we drink?
Uh, yes, they do, but increasingly the smaller wineries are playing a big role locally. I mean, they have more access to different markets, certainly through in some parts of the US where you have direct sales. You can get that little wine from Idaho or from Colorado or something like that, and be able to tap into those as opposed to being stuck with the few large brands that are there. And I think that's what opening up markets and allowing sales direct to the consumer allows.
And are you going through the same issues we are here in Canada? Like this direct shipping is a big issue here. We can't
Yes.
ship across provinces. It's actually easier for us to get a California wine than it is from province to province. It's
Wow.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you experiencing that as well?
We have. I mean, ever since ever since I've been involved in the US industry, yes, that's been an ongoing issue. It's a lot better right now than it was. Texas certainly, we have some. We are allowed to have shipping in across state lines. There
Okay.
is some regulation associated with that, but there was a time where you were not able to get wine from California or from wherever. Yeah.
What changed it other than lobbying politicians? Was there anything we
Yeah.
can do here that can take as a case note study from you?
Well, I think the thing changed for Texas was that we have a local industry.
Mm-hmm.
That local industry has an economic impact on the state. It brings in X number of tax dollars. It has jobs. I think the argument of rural development is a huge one in terms of helping us grow our local industry in rural areas that have been declining, and it wine is a great diversification away from cotton and corn and other and other crops that we had. So I think the economic argument actually is the strongest one as well. You know, consumer choice is a big one too, but
Sure.
that doesn't always go as far as I say, as jobs, taxes that a local industry can bring in, and I think if you can make the argument that we free up, if we can free up these markets, it allows for that growth and development of local industries.
That is pivotal. I haven't heard it put that way before because we've talked about free my grapes up here, but the whole
Mm.
less urban,
Hmm.
rural development,
Yep,
jobs, and not concentrating everything in a city and the congestion and the services that attend to that, like getting people with jobs, good jobs, out in rural areas,
absolutely.
especially as farming jobs are on the decline. Like this is such a high value add, grassroots kind of agricultural product.
Yep.
I would think, yeah, there would be a big push to try to do that.
Because
It's a good way to look at it.
yeah, you get a winery out there, and before long there'll be a restaurant or two
Yeah,
around it, and then an art. Someone who likes to do art
yeah.
that opens up their little store and the thing. So you have a sort of little cluster of tourism out in the rural areas that can make a big impact on a local community with good jobs, like you say.
Absolutely, that's great. So, in the world of wine marketing campaigns, doesn't have to be wine tourism, but could be for a particular brand. Is
Yep.
there one that was a disaster that you can talk about? I would love to know the case study
No,
method.
yeah, I can't really think of any. We don't actually get here in this part of the world a lot of wine marketing or particular wineries campaigns,
Hmm.
and I don't know whether that's the reason for that, um, but we don't really get um, a lot of major campaigns. That they tend to be. Um, we get some in print and things like that, but not certainly not on TV.
But say on in
Mm.
print, have you found
Mhm.
any that are particularly well, successful or not successful? Is there anything that's caught your eye? I mean, we don't have a got milk campaign for wine,
Right.
or at least
Yeah.
that I've seen.
Yeah.
But
And
what
and
have you
and
noticed?
and I think part of the reason for a long time there was sensitivity about it because it's alcohol or it has
Yeah.
happens to have alcohol as part of its makeup, and I think there was a concern about that. I also think there's a um, wine is such a fragmented industry that we have a few huge players and then literally thousands of small producers, and trying to get sort of a coordinated message is going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, that's true. There's no economies of scale, it seems, and just
Yeah.
again, you look at a book, a Tom Clancy book that was published in 1989 versus the reprint now in 2018. It's the same
Hmm.
book,
Yes.
but look at a wine from those two vintages. That's
Yeah, very
completely
different.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go back to the comments here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me just toggle down here. Claire, okay. Lori, we got your question there. Paul, there are still a few states that bar shipping between states. I couldn't ship a bottle to Massachusetts to a friend. Huh. And Lois Gilbert is here. Okay, so Tim, what kind of research projects are you working on now? What's new? What's new in the world of wine marketing that might interest us from a consumer perspective?
There's a lot of different topics. One of the things I thought would happen is that at some point I'd run out of topics that we could think about in terms of wine, but it just keeps evolving. We are constantly the business is constantly evolving. It's becoming seems like more global. There's new types of packaging that are coming along. The new varieties, new regions, consumers acting in different ways and looking at things differently as generations change. And so it's I thought it would be a little easier to kind of figure things out and then be done and move on to beer or something. But no, it's something that really is constantly changing. And we've done some studies, for instance. On males and females, looking at
Yeah.
or that kind of came up in some of our studies, and looking at differences in how males and females tend to look at things. And certainly there's a lot of exceptions to whatever rules you find. But
Sure. But what did you find generally? What are the big differences between the way men and women buy wine?
yeah, one of the first things is that men tend to be trophy buyers. So
Mm-hmm.
they buy for sellers, and they like to have things that are rare and exceptional, whereas women are a lot more sort of practical for more immediate consumption. They're conscious of color and labels a lot more so than men. Um, and then in the tasting room setting, we came across a really interesting. My colleague Natalia, who's listening there,
Mm-hmm.
and I did a study looking at uh, what happens when people go into a tasting room. They get a free um, uh, visit around the winery. They get a couple of free glasses of wine, and have a great experience. Well, women tend to buy either wine, t-shirts, whatever else, out of a feeling of obligation. They feel obligated because they've had such a great experience, and so someone spent some time with me, and I really feel kind of guilty if I don't if I don't buy something. Now, if you put a $10 tasting fee on that, then that goes away,
Huh.
because you've satisfied um, your your obligation, basically.
Obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually we did a little bit of a look at whether or not it was actually better to be free and get people to buy more, or put $10 or whatever it is on the tasting fee, um, and not get as much in the way of sales. And we could have gone a little further on that, and I think that would be really kind of interesting to find out where that point was, where you generate
Right.
more money.
Crossover. So
Yeah.
what was the net analysis? Is it better to be free or not?
Well, I think it depends. Like everything with wine, it
Everything,
depends.
yes. Sure.
And a lot of that is also a lot of that is dependent on where you are in the region you're in. If you've
Yeah.
got literally thousands of people lined up at your door that are wanting to just churn through, then you've really got to put a fee on it, and do that. If you're really trying to get people in the door, and then it's actually makes probably more sense to have free tastings, and find that people will actually buy more
Yeah.
in those situations.
Awesome.
And then males, on the other hand, that they need to feel grateful in order to buy. In other words, they need to feel like they've had such a good wine and feel like really good about the experience. That, in other words, they don't feel as guilty as females
Okay.
about walking out the door
That's interesting.
without anything, if they didn't really
Okay, so they're not
like the wine.
beholden. They just want
Right.
to know that they've had a
Yeah.
great experience, and so yes, I'll lay down some cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just.
well, yeah, I'm going to come back and ask you some more questions on women versus men, Tim. I'm going to take a little tiny little break here just to say, if you're enjoying this conversation, folks, do feel free to take it to the next level, your own wine knowledge and tasting, by joining me in a free online video class at nataliemclean.com/pro. We have a lot of fun with that. We do food pairings as well. And if you're enjoying this conversation, take a moment just to share it. It's okay if someone doesn't get the whole thing. There's always the video replay, but if you share it with your friends, family, followers, and let them know why you're enjoying it, comments help. That would be great. And as you know, at the end of our conversation, I'll be drawing for a winner from last week in terms of a signed copy of my book for sharing that video. For this video and throughout this week, we will be drawing for some swag that from Texas Tech University that I should sort of clarify. So, Tim, do you have any of the swag there?
Let me see. I did grab a bag
Okay.
of our stuff
Ooh.
here. So
Okay.
we'll have some T-shirts,
Yes.
coffee mug,
Ooh.
and various other Texas Tech items.
Excellent.
And for those of you who are following professional football,
Oh, yeah.
one of our uh, former football players is with Kansas City.
Oh.
Patrick Mahomes is from Texas Tech, and so he's kind of one of the current stars
Ah.
um, of professional football right now in the
Oh,
US. Anyway,
wow.
yeah.
I have just consumed 4 seasons out of 5 of Friday Night Light or yeah,
Oh,
Friday Night Lights, and it's turned me on to football and Texas.
there we
I
go.
love it. I
Well,
love it.
the two go together very much so. Yeah, that was one of the things I really had to learn when I came here.
Oh yes, yes, because yes, you're Kiwi, right? You're New
Right.
Zealand.
Yes, I'm from New Zealand
Yeah,
originally.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, so well, we got more comments. Let me just tune in here. So Francis Hack Brown, nobody can beat the 1980s Pied d'Or campaign for the French chateau, and the woman who told everyone it's dry without the hedge, the edge. Wow, you have a good memory, Francis.
That's good.
Lori says, I'm a wine importer of Italian wine. What are the 2 key tips you'd recommend when marketing? Focus on the winery, focus on the end consumer. Best way to get the word out using online marketing, she's asking.
Mm,
Good question, Lori.
yeah, yeah. Um, to me, education is the key to pretty much everything. So I think you've just got to spend time educating whoever you can find in a fun and way, because once people have knowledge of whatever wine you have in the region, and then they're a lot more attentive to. There's just so many different brands and styles and things that we're all totally confused. I don't remember, the wines I've had last week and things like that. And I mean, you kind of get general categories and regions, but it is very confusing for consumers.
Awesome. Okay. So Tim, I can't believe how this has flown by. We're already at 6:45. Wow. So I want to ask you a few more personal wine questions. Kind of what's the best piece of wine advice you've ever received?
Um, that education brings enjoyment.
Hmm.
And I really believe that with wine. I think it's the key. Well, it's the key to so many things. Is that the more you know about a particular topic, and the more you learn, the more you enjoy it, and you become, looking at that bottle of wine, you suddenly sort of start understanding the history behind the region, or the types of grapes that are grown, the processes, all those sort of things add to the enjoyment of wine as a product and a category.
I agree.
So the more and more you can do, taking courses, reading books, going to places, if you can travel. That's travel is just a beautiful way to learn,
Absolutely.
and it just reinforces all the things. I've been fortunate to go on a few trips to places that I've read about and heard about, but once you go there, it just reinforces, and puts those things into a whole new level. Mm.
Absolutely. Like I've been to Burgundy and just it's a confusing region to
Yes.
start with. But
Oh, that, yeah.
when you taste and you're in the place and then you're
Yes.
tasting the wine, that's that multi-sensory thing that comes together. And the other example I would take from outside of the wine world is I was a dancer for 20 some years. So when I watch ballet or somebody dance,
Mm.
I don't just have an intellectual response to it. I have a muscular response to it
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
been there, done that. Like it's just a full body kind of.
Mm.
And so I do believe when you educate yourself, there is deeper enjoyment. It's okay to just ride along the surface and have a
Sure.
glass and not think about it.
Hmm.
But there's something to be said for really knowing the deeper levels and saying,
Mm.
whoa, I see this, I taste
Mm.
that, I get that, I get the
Mm.
minerality or the terroir or whatever.
Absolutely, and you know those fantastic moments when you are meeting with the winemaker or someone, and they're going through all the history of the winery, and really talking in depth about it, and try you know are just to me magic, and that's what the whole industry is all about. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Tim, one more question here. If you could
Mm.
share a bottle of wine with anyone living or dead, who would that be? What would the wine be?
Good question. I have been asked that before. I'd sort of have to go to a couple of people in history. Probably Winston Churchill would be an interesting one because of his love for champagne, and
Hmm.
who could say no to good champagne, and kind of and he was such just an interesting person. His writing and his all the things, leadership, and all the things he did throughout his life. And then the other one I think would be maybe Thomas Jefferson,
Hmm.
again because of how he introduced wine. He was a big influence to introducing wine into the US, and his knowledge, uh, and certainly starting up wine there in Virginia, and
Yeah.
on and on.
Would you
So
try to
those would be a
introduce
couple.
both of them to Texas wine?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah,
Here, have a glass of this.
yeah.
Um, Excellent. So, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to mention right now, Tim?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think we've covered pretty well
covered a lot.
some good topics. But just I just say I hope that everyone here continues their learning. You've obviously got a good group of people who want to keep learning, and thinking about wine. Beyond just like you say, a casual glass that'll make it a lot more interesting. So.
Absolutely. We've got a really engaged audience here. And where can we find you online, Tim?
Certainly, through the Texas Wine Marketing Research Institute at Texas Tech University. So if you look up the Texas Wine Marketing Research Institute, you can track me down. And if anyone wants to come and study here, do some research into Texas wine, then give me a shout, and we'll see if we can sign you up.
Absolutely.
Mm.
I almost feel like I'm being recruited for football, but
Absolutely.
in a wine way. We'll post that link in the Facebook and also
Oh,
on
okay.
our blog post so that people can find you and find the research studies you've done, which are fascinating. Tim, I want to thank you so much for spending your Sunday party or Sunday evening with us. It's been a great discussion, great insights. So I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Okay,
All right.
bye for now, Tim. Take
Bye
care.
bye. Okay.
Okay, bye
Bye.
bye. All right, folks. Well, we can stay tuned here for a bit, and I need to announce the winner of the draw from last week. And wow, I'm looking at your questions, and people are still coming in. Excellent. Lori says, education brings enjoyment. Yes. Hello, Marshall Weir, Mitt Sawney, Donna Whitaker. Beverly says, thank you, Tim. Wonderful evening, says Paul. All right, guys. So next weekend, we will have Ellen McCoy. She is the wine columnist for Bloomsburg News in New York City. Really smart woman who wrote two books, one about Robert Parker and the influence of wine scores. So I love just chatting with wine writers and getting to the heart of the matter with a particular issue. So, what about wine scores? That'll be next week. And again, if you're watching the replay, feel free to share it because that will still count. All that swag that Tim mentioned, the t-shirts, the mugs, I think he's got a baseball cap from Texas Tech University, pretty cool looking stuff. You can qualify by sharing and commenting on this video right now throughout the week till next week. And now I should announce last week's winner. I don't know where my sound maker is, so I need you to help me. Psh, like that. Last week's winner for his shares and comments is Anthony White. Anthony White, and I believe, Anthony, you are in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You're getting a signed copy of my book. Not sure that you're here tonight. I haven't seen you commenting, but maybe you're here. But you are the winner from last week. So, guys, as always, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I have so much fun in this. I look forward to it. And I hope to see you next Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, Toronto, New York time, when we'll be chatting with Lynn McCoy. She's a super smart woman, Bloomberg News columnist. And we'll talk all about wine scores and other issues too, not just that. All right, guys, keep commenting. I'll jump in later and comment back and answer questions, as will our guest, Dr. Tim Dodd. I'll give him the link to respond to your questions that we got to or did not get to tonight. Take care, guys. Bye bye for now.